When I first began planning my presentation for this task, I imagined an elaborate Venn diagram comparing and contrasting the similarities and differences between technological and indigenous ways of thinking. Unfortunately, as I began to gather research, I came to find that there really wasn't much to compare, only contrast. Technological ways are made clear in technology's biases, which are listed explicitly in the September 28th class notes. Technology is Western, white, male, and individualistic. It is progress and speed oriented, locked into the scientific method, a parts to the whole approach, linear. It is military, democratic, consumer-centric, and it is emotionless. In contrast, indigenous ways, which itself is somewhat of a misnomer, since, as the Canadian Council on Learning, PAP, and Pedersen et al. Point out, there are distinct differences between and within Canada's First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Though there are commonalities which appear across Canada's Indigenous peoples, it is important to distinguish similarities from a perception of an all-encompassing Indigenous culture. Among these shared values is an emphasis on community-focused, interdependent relationships among families, elders, and other community members for the benefit of the whole. This circular, continuous understanding reflects the lifelong nature of these values, acquired through experience and shared through oral tradition. These values are ritual-centered, nature and land-based. They are ceremonial, spiritual, and emotional. So, how can we take advantage of both? First, as we saw in the Birch Bark Canoe video by Manitoba Aerospace, the 36-foot Canoe de Maitre was a design that was neither improved upon nor replaced by a European technology. Settlers and educators need to accept and demonstrate our acceptance of the fact that Indigenous ways of knowing are not inherently inferior to technological ways of thinking. When we begin to do this, we acknowledge that Indigenous ways are not only worthy of incorporating into Western technological ways of thinking, which for PAP and Tanaka constitutes borderline, if not full-on cultural appropriation, but that these ways have merit in and of themselves. Secondly, we need to recognize that, again, as noted by PAP and Tanaka, in many regards, current trends in education closely resemble Indigenous values. Many 21st century pedagogical values, which include creativity, innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, metacognition, communication, collaboration, information literacy, technological literacy, citizenship, life and career skills, cultural awareness, and personal and social responsibility align quite well with Indigenous values outlined previously. Incorporating Indigenous ways of thinking into the classroom does not require educators to undertake some pedagogical revolution. These practices should already exist in the classroom. Finally, we need to be critical and deliberate in the pedagogical choices we make. It has been said many times throughout the semester, but I will say it here again. Technology is not the lesson. It is a tool for facilitating the lesson. Additionally, as outlined previously, technology has a bias. If we choose to ignore this, we likely perpetuate that bias. But, above all, we need to keep in mind that technology is not a prerequisite for good teaching. Students can get a good education without it. In much the same way, when incorporating Indigenous values, we cannot do so simply because it's trendy or because we're supposed to, but with purpose. So, to try and answer the question more directly, how do we take advantage of both? I think it's by being more purposeful about what, why, and how we teach.